Hello and welcome back to Angular 2 Masterclass with Alejandro Rangel. In this section, we will talk about a very complex topic that is reactive programming with RxJS. So what is reactive programming? When I was designing this masterclass, everything seems to be natural and easy to explain to any kind of developer, but reactive programming actually it's a pretty advanced concept that it took me several weeks, maybe 1 month and a half, to fully understand the concept behind reactive programming and why this is so useful in the modern programming language. So I really recommend that this part you take it slowly and read as much documentation as possible. Not only this video, I will just cover the tip of the iceberg, but once you start understanding reactive programming, you will discover the potential of coding in a different way. Basically, you don't wait for a result of an execution. You just subscribe to an event that will happen at some point, and once this event is triggered, then you execute some kind of logic with it. So it's kind of similar to promises. Yeah. So if you come from Angular 1, for example, or pure JavaScript ES6, probably you are used to work with promises. You call a function, and then when a promise is resolved, your code is going to be executed. Reactive programming and the library RxJS can work with promises in the same way, but promises are limited to certain code, and that it happens just after you trigger actually the call. So I make I call this function, it's executed, and then I wait. The difference with RxJS and with reactive programming is that I subscribe to an event, but I don't trigger the event. So I don't tell execute this and then I wait. No. With reactive programming, you just stay there, and at some point, if some event happen, then you react to it. That's where the word reactive programming comes from. So I will try to do this with the most simple example that I found. I explained it to several programmers before putting this example in this slide. So I have been trying to simplify this as much as possible. Once you start reading the documentation, you will see that this topic is way beyond what I explained here. So let's talk a little bit about reactive.io. This is the main sponsor of RxJS. Let's go and take a look of it. So here we have, this is a website, reactivex.io. This is a website of the guys that are writing RxJS. But if you don't write only Angular code, that Angular 2 use RxJS, if you write C#, Java, Ruby, and so on, this library works in any of these platforms. Okay, so yes. Also, you can be wondering, okay, why is this so great and magnificent? Reactive.io has a lot of support from Microsoft, Netflix, GitHub, SoundCloud, Trello. So at least this big brands has interfaces, websites, super complex that needs UX that needs to react to several interactions. So for example, in SoundCloud, if you modify something like pause or add, so follow and so on, everything has to be react nicely to these changes, and if you think about linear programming, like if I click here, do this, then the web has so many cases that probably you can't handle a super nice UX that they have. Netflix on their side, they have also a super complex interface, and they are dealing with a stream of data, and this is nicely handled by ReactiveX. So you could take a look on YouTube, and search for RxJS Netflix, and there are a lot of videos of them explaining how the architecture and their user interface works nicely with RxJS. So going back to the slides, let's go here. You can see that the big players and with complex interfaces are using Reactive right now. So this is an indicative that this will keep growing and it will get more and more interesting. It's amazing, but in this masterclass of Angular 2, again, we talk about a Microsoft technology. We said before TypeScript. We talk about Visual Code Studio, and now we are talking about reactive programming, and Microsoft is one of the main sponsors of this. So Angular 2, it's mainly tied to open source Microsoft technology. Reactive programming is based on the observable pattern. So if you study software engineering, and if you remember these boring classes about singleton, MVC, and so on, one of these patterns was the observable. And if you remember these concepts, then you already know what is reactive programming, so you can put it in practice. Okay, and everything that we are talking here is about asynchronous programming. So they define, the guys from RxJS, that this library, it's about asynchronous data streams. So a data stream can be anything that it's put, let's say, in a queue of operations in a way, in an asynchronous way. Okay, RxJS is the sum up of, they have observables. Then we can apply operators to these observables like mapping function, flat map, and many other ones, and schedulers. That this is a pretty advanced topic actually inside RxJS. So here we can see an example, from an iterable. This is what we have been doing so far, and an observable. So let's say in the left side that we can apply several operations to a data that comes from local memory. So we, for example, skip the first 10, then we take the 5, then we apply a mapping transformation, and for each result, we print in the console next element and so on. So without observable, we can do exactly the same. So we get the data from network in this case. We apply skip 10, then take 5, and then apply a map operation, and then you subscribe to the result of this in an asynchronous way, and you print the value, okay, the next value that you are waiting. So as you can see, if you are working right now with iterables, it's as simple of changing the for each, in this case, for subscribing to the observable, and then you are using RxJS. It's important to remember that reactive programming, they always define that everything is a string. And this is like the karma that they have. So if we go back to the previous slide, every time that we apply an operation, like skip 10, take 5, map, and subscribe, everything that is going from top to bottom, it's a stream of data. It's considered a stream, okay? So I have been trying to put a simple example on how can we apply reactive programming to a user, to a UX. in a normal website. So let's analyze this example. We have a website and it has a register button and a login button, and both will call a service that will talk with the server for getting a user. So if you register and fill all the data in the register form, you will go to the server and you are waiting for a user, the new user that you have created, right? On the other hand, if you click login, then you put the credentials and then you will go to the server and you are expecting also the arrival of a user, right? So once the user arrives to our website, there will be many stuff that should happen, right? So the user arrives and we have to change the header. So now it displays the button logout, it displays the user, in this case my username from Twitter, follow me, and in the middle of the website it appears a welcome message to the user. So all this should happen once the user arrives. So how can we do this with the normal linear programming without coupling all the header with the home page? It's not possible. So we will need a component that then dispatch an event to the header, so the header can change the logout button. Instead of the register and the login, we have to change the welcome. So it's not so simple. With reactive programming, this is one of the easiest case to solve, because every area of the website, even if there are different codes and different modules, all of them can subscribe to the arrival or to the change of the user object and then react differently in different areas of the application. So this is where the reactive programming comes, the React work comes. Everything will react to this event, to this string of data, if we want to tell properly. So let's say that this is our user component. This is a service that will talk with the user database, with the server. So if we see the example, forget about the first line that return new observables. I will explain this in a minute. We call the HTTP GET. So we go to the, remember the diagram, we go to the server, so to get the user. Once we get the result, then we can apply to this stream of data a mapping operation where we transform this stream of data in JSON. So we receive all the information from the server, like the status, the error code, and so on. But we can apply a rest.json. So this comes from RxJS, and actually that's what we will do very often in Angular with the HTTP library. And we apply a mapping transformation to this stream of data, and then we continue the chain. So then we can subscribe to this stream of data and then dispatch the stream of data with the observable.next. So this returns to the outside world of the component at observable. Remember, in reactive programming, everything is a stream, so everybody can subscribe to this string of data, whatever it is. This is the user component. And now, if we have several areas in the application, different parts and code, we have the welcome component. This is the center of the screen of the website. We have the login component and the register component. All of them can subscribe to the previous example, to this observable, to this return. All of them can subscribe, and when the user change, the arrival of the user or the delete of the user, then they can react in different areas of the application. For example, in the welcome component, if there is a user, then we show the welcome. So it says, welcome Alejandro Angel. If there is no user in this string of data, then we hide the welcome component. In the login component, if there is a user in this string of data, then we hide the login button, because this means that we are already logged in. or we show the login button if there is no user, and in the register exactly the same. So different parts of the application react to the string of data of the user observable. So if you try to do this with normal programming or with promises, you will need a centralized service that then call different areas of the application. And this is very complex because if you multiply these three components by many, because you will have a banner component, footer component, and many more, then the element that is in charge of the orchestration of all this gets more and more complex. In this case, with reactive programming, all the components stay independently from each other and they react to the string differently. So now let's go to a practical example that took me a little bit of time to think how is the easiest way to explain what is reactive programming.